Megan, what's
I did that one last time.
It's the same
What's
one.
your topic?
You just say it for the record.
Okay.
My topic is something that I was thinking about talking about.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
I haven't like narrowed it down like what I want to specify, but just like my age and like just the way that the world is just like viewing like our generation as just like not really having an impact on this candidacy.
Results, reactions, and more. It's
Like Bernie did?
you can count on now through November. News Radio KFBK, 93.1 FM and 1530 AM.
Welcome back. Our presidential town hall debate continues on News Radio KFBK, along with streaming video on KFBK.com and Facebook Live. I'm John McGinnis. Also in studio with me, our panel of experts, Mike Madrid, Republican strategist, Steve Maviglio, Democratic strategist, and Professor Kristen Tudor, a debate coach from California State University, Sacramento. A lot of thoughts stirring around, and of course, I think the comment has been made 3 or 4 times at least right here in this room that the bar was set rather low. And what I'm hearing here, frankly, is that she was told to not come across as loathsome, and he was told to not come across as a lunatic. And I guess the question is, did they meet their directives? It looks as though I think she came across rather positive. I wouldn't say he came across like a lunatic. I thought he did okay, but I did see missed opportunities on the part of both of them, most notably Donald Trump. And maybe there's time in subsequent debates. I want to get your thoughts on that with regard to where they need to go from here. But first of all, we have an observation from the audience.
Indeed, John, this is Megan Summers, and she was thinking about how the current candidates, don't really address some of the issues necessarily that affect millennials or that millennials are thinking about.
Yeah, like coming here, like I didn't know what to expect with like the other people in the room, and I kind of realized I was like the only one in the younger 20s, and the room was full of like the older generations. And
Do you mean that in a negative way?
no, not in a negative way. Y'all are great. But it was just like interesting just listening to the topics that Trump and Clinton were talking about. They all catered towards like the baby boomers rather than the millennials. And I feel like at the beginning of the whole campaign when Bernie was still running, all of these millennials were so like involved and invested because he was focusing on like lowering debt, which like I'm not going to say I agree with or not. But just like all these different things that are catered towards the younger generations, which was getting all of these kids involved. But now that he's gone, all these like younger kids my age and like up to their like 30s or something, I think only like the poll stated that like 32% of the millennials said that they were definitely going to watch this debate, which kind of shows something because they've already recognized that these candidates aren't going to cater towards what they need. They're all focusing on the baby boomers and like people like themselves. And I think they need to like step back and realize that the main people who are going to be voting on them probably are the baby boomers and not the millennials, but they're going to be they're going to be president for the people who are my age and a little bit older now. And that's just the first step into like the next few years.
So what is important to you? What are the critical issues? If you were going to ask them each a couple of questions, what would they be?
Shoot, that's a deep question. Probably, I'm really like big on like not having too much gun control. Like I recognize it's a problem, and there's a lot of like mass murders and everything. And like for instance, like Australia had one mass murder and they got rid of guns and they have no problems now. But I think there's a better way about going at it because taking away guns or whatever is just going to ruin things, I think. But I would just want to know like more about that and like, more about that from both of them. Education wise, like they both like talk about like lowering debt, Hillary more so than Trump. But I would just want to like see like their back, like why kind of. They always like say these things, but they don't say why. They don't give more information.
Interesting observation. I think it's entirely valid. Bernie Sanders, who by the way is older than the two remaining candidates, did talk to the younger people. My first reaction is that you're dealing with one of these people would be the eldest person ever to assume the office of President of the United States. The other, the second, only one, second beyond Ronald Reagan. So you think that may be why they're not engaged with the millennials. However, as you look to Bernie Sanders, that was his primary platform.
Yeah.
And I know that each of them have tried to peel off her supporters, but with, I guess, yet to be determined levels of success. But what about your beliefs as you look at the world that lies ahead as a young woman looking for career opportunities, looking for good financial independence and freedom? What's important to you? What do you think are steps that need to be considered? Did Bernie Sanders convince you of anything that was positive?
No.
Okay.
I can say that straight off the bat. Free college sounds great, but if it's
Right.
free, like everybody's going to get it, and it's not going to be like a good thing anymore, in my opinion. But shoot, what was the original?
So what do you want to hear from? What's really important to you other than the gun control issue? And you know, the Second Amendment stands, and so the ability to tremendously cut away at that is in question at least. But other things that are important to you from a kind of a generational perspective as you look at the world from your point in life right now, what do you want to hear them address?
Maybe more about like jobs and like the economy. Like it is a big topic, as they talked about tonight, but just like what it's going to be looking like with all the baby boomers retiring and getting out of jobs. Like we've been told so much that when you graduate, you're going to find a job because like they're all going to be retired. Like you're stepping into that, but like after that, like after all of those fields are open for us, like we're like our population is like this like compared to the baby boomer population. So like what is gonna like following us, like when I retire is a long time, but like what is that the like open availability and jobs gonna look like after the baby boomers retire and after we fulfill them? Like then what? Like it's not going to be as easy to be getting jobs because there's not going to be as many openings. Like, are there going to be like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Opportunities. So you want something to address the
Yeah.
need for opportunities going
Yeah.
forward. I think that's understandable. And as a non-millennial, which you may have picked up on, I share that. And I think a lot of us do. It's not limited to people who are necessarily at your stage in life. Mike, what do you
Do you
got?
think young people are going to show up to vote this year?
I personally am. I think that more people are saying that yes, they will show up than they actually will, which is like the case with, I guess, everybody, you could say. But I'd like to believe that people are going to, like the younger generation is going to show up because it's their future that they're voting for. But in like reality, I don't think many will.
I've got to say, this is something that first of all, let me also apologize. I'm not a baby boomer, but on behalf of the baby boomer generation,
Yeah.
these are the last two baby boomer candidates that this generation is offering as the leaders of the free world. I'm sorry. The fact that there's nothing inspiring about either of these candidates to compel a new generation to be involved, to see their country aspirationally, is a concern we really all need to have. I've never seen anything like this before. And if we don't have at least matching turnout to what we've seen in previous election cycles, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy with democracy. It's kind of scary.
Very much so. Appreciate your input very much. Let me ask the partisans first of all. Did you have more?
Oh, no, we're good.
Okay. Let me ask the partisans first of all. Mike, I'll ask you. If you're going to sit down with Donald Trump in a room for 2 hours with a legal pad and pen and all your brilliance to impart on him, what would you tell him for the next debate? What does he need to do?
Well, the unfortunate part is I know he wouldn't listen to anything that I told him. So at this point, I think that's I mean, I'm joking,
No,
but not really. You have to double down and just say, be who you are, because you're not going to control him. You're not going to maintain him. You're not going to rein him in. He can't help himself. He's going to take the bait. So you might as well just step on the gas and see where it takes you. Look, the truth of the matter is, and we were having this talk back in June of last year. I was saying, something's going on. This is scaring me as a Republican. This guy's winning primary after primary. Don't underestimate what he is tapping into. And here we find a dead heat in the Electoral College, a dead heat nationally, 40 days out of a presidential campaign. Something is going on in this country, regardless of whether he wins or loses. We're going to look back and figure out and try to assess what it was that we have been missing, because it is significant, it is profound, and it's not something that we can manage the way we traditionally have as political consultants.
Steve Maviglio, if you're going to have an opportunity to sit down with Hillary Clinton for a couple hours and impart your wisdom on her.
I thought you were going to give me time with Donald Trump because I really would like to do that. and which kind of surprised me, and my advice to him would be do what you've been doing the last 6 weeks, and that's look and act like a president. He's an actor, right? He should have been able to do that tonight, and he didn't, which stunned me. I thought he was going to come out as commander-in-chief and very smart and not roll his eyes and not interrupt, and he didn't do that. So my advice to him was, you know what you've done the last few weeks, and then while you're tied, do that, but he didn't. Okay. For her, I don't know. I mean, she checked all the boxes I thought she had to. There was a few opportunities that she didn't take advantage. I thought she did good baiting him into falling into her trap of him looking like he did and answering like he did and proving that he didn't have any plans. I thought the moderator was a little friendly to her tonight with some of the questions that were asked about the birther, about the woman's look question at the end. There were a couple that I was like, we'll take those. And you could see she smiled when they came out of his mouth. And so if I were her, I'd be prepared for the next debate. If Donald Trump shows up with, him, he might go crazy and say he's not doing it anymore tomorrow. Just keep doing what you do and spend that time to prepare because it paid off in spades tonight.
With regard to the moderator tonight, another example of Trump's just not getting things quite right was late last week, he asserted publicly on the Fox News channel in a conversation with Bill O'Reilly that Lester Holt is a Democrat. Well, the fact of the matter is, Lester Holt has been a registered Republican in New York State since 2003, and to the best of my ability to get information, prior to that was a registered Republican in California. So is that a substantive issue? I don't think so much, but in terms of when they're trying their best to hang the liar label on him, he's kind of playing into it.
Well, he doubled down on like 3 different things tonight about the Iraq War. He spent like 5 minutes talking about how he talked to Sean Hannity off screen about that. The murder rate in New York, he said, go ahead, check. He was wrong about that. I mean, he was wrong, and then he wouldn't admit he was wrong.
The specific data there was a spike in 2015, but it has leveled off. Yeah. So and those are things that are relatively easy to check and verify, and that's where I think his message, the people with whom he surrounds himself, those upon whom he relies for the counsel that he takes, I think are persuasive. But in terms of actually accepting the responsibility of getting it right and respecting the importance of that, in traditional context of debating, my sense is he's not hitting the mark. But as you point out, Mike, this is a different time. It may not matter one bit.
Yeah, you're right.
I can have questions for you in particular when we come back, because I want to talk about it has been mentioned, the facial expressions, the eye rolling, the single syllable commentary. Not healthy, but we're going to continue with more conversation coming up right after this. Everybody having a good time?
I have to think if you strip away, okay, they're both lying through their teeth, presidential candidates, and unfortunately, presidents have done all my life. So you strip that away, and then what are we left with? One unproven, but he's a good business leader. He's a leader.
Yeah,
and the other one, we know from her time in office that she's full of shenanigans.
And just to make sure everybody's aware, we are in break on broadcast radio, but we are live streaming still, so just keep that in mind. No problems. But I think you raise a good point, and that is, he has done some things rather impressively, all in the private sector, which is a different animal. But the people that he has brought in from whom to seek counsel, Steve Moore on the economy, Rudy Giuliani on Homeland Security and respect for the rule of law. Dr. Ben Carson, I think, in terms of helping to craft a more genteel message, those are all very, very impressive people. But as Mike points out, where's tonight? Where were they tonight?
I think you're really,
yeah. I think part of what you're tapping into is why the substantive part of her is not gaining traction. If you listen to the Clinton surrogates, they're lighting their hair on fire going, she's the most qualified person to ever, walk the face of the earth. And that may be true, but if you don't trust somebody, the last person you trust is somebody you want that knows how to pull all the levers to get stuff done. It reinforces the argument that this is somebody who is dishonest. Well, 11% of Americans believe she's honest. 11!
That's huge.
Still,
11!
I'm in that bucket of deplorables.
Well,
So
that didn't help either.
I don't want business as usual. It's not working on how many fronts? You know, economically, with the race thing, with.
Right.
We know this isn't working, so this is what, I mean, it's the people behind
30
Trump
seconds.
that have built this. It could have been anybody.
Right.
If he had the same, if they had the same emotion behind it, they would have gotten just as far as he has.
Mm-hmm.
It's our disgust with business as usual that I think is hopefully reaching at this crescendo that, would be wonderful to see it stop.
Be coming back in just a minute. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. John McGinnis with you for a special post-debate conversation in Town Hall. We've got input from the audience. We're going to get more. We also have a panel of experts, which includes, from the Democratic perspective, Steve Maviglio, from the Republican perspective, Mike Madrid, and from the debate expertise and professional communication perspective, professor of communication studies and debate coach at Sacramento State University, who we're very happy to have here with us tonight, Kristen Tudor. Thank you, Professor, for being here. And let me start with you, if I may. We saw a little bit of this tonight, and I'll tell you, I don't know about your reaction. Anybody want to chime in? But when when Hillary Clinton was speaking and Donald Trump was making faces, I thought to myself, and I'm not a debate expert, but I thought this is not good. This does not make him. Doesn't rise to the occasion of the office of dignity that he aspires to hold.
Absolutely, and that's traditional wisdom with debates. And I do have to sort of make an asterisk here that Trump has flipped a lot of traditional wisdom and conventional wisdom about what to do in a debate on its head. That being said, I'm comfortable saying that from here on out, and including tonight, I think that both campaigns should heed what traditional wisdom says about debate performances. Again, and because you're looking for getting those nonpartisan, undecided voters, and the research has shown that what they want is civility, they want depth, they want issue-oriented debate. Right? That's just what the research shows. And again, I may be proven wrong. I was proven wrong in the primary debates. Every time he would do something and I thought, oh, his numbers are going to fall, they would go up. So I will again put that asterisk there.
Let me share my theory on that.
Yes.
And I'll be interested in hearing from anybody on this. I think in the primaries, he was beating up Republicans, and frankly, there were a lot of people who are either neutral or on the left who were celebrating that. And of course, the media was very happy to highlight his decimating his Republican challengers. Now that we're in the general election, I don't think that's going to have the same level of appeal. There will be those that I think are firmly in his camp already, and not to disparage any group of people, but that group has been identified as non-college educated whites. Mm-hmm. And I think he has, that group's not going away. Mm-hmm. So to appeal to them at this juncture, again, not to take anything away from any group of people, but if you have them already, why are you continuing to work toward their acceptance, perhaps to the detriment of your success with appealing to other groups?
Exactly, and again, I go back to what the research shows on what makes someone more likable, what makes them seem like a leader, what makes them seem like they have character, and again, audiences, voters don't like interrupting, and he interrupted consistently. You know, just with the moving up to the microphone and wrong, that would be something I would try to coach out of him. But again, I have to come back to, should we be coaching Trump out of Trump? You know,
how many times have I interrupted you tonight? Don't answer that. Mike, it looks like you're holding thoughts.
Well, look, let me tell you why I don't agree with that. The answer is because he's not looking for undecided votes. He's looking to turn out base, and it's working, okay? Let me tell you why. He is up in Ohio. He has closed the gap entirely in Pennsylvania. He's moving in Michigan. He's up in Iowa. These are states that Republicans haven't been competitive in since the early 1980s. And here's why. That non-college educated, blue-collar, white voter is the break that he is getting is far greater than he can get from other demographic groups. Now, I don't want to suggest that he is consciously doing this, but I can tell you what, every Republican strategist has been looking at this since at least the mid-1980s. He is the first candidate who is putting these states back in play. Now, he's closing the gap in places like Georgia, where she's becoming more competitive. Arizona, that is becoming more diverse. So there's not a scramble for undecided voters. As I said earlier, this is all about going to your base. And that is a change that we have seen in presidential campaigns since the second Bush term, when we realized there aren't undecided voters. People know how they believe. They are predisposed how they believe. And what we do is we drive turnout.
So
both sides.
He's simply looking to drive turnout. at this
Absolutely. It's working.
point. Steve?
Well, that may be true, maybe he wins the battle, but that is a war-losing strategy for the Republican Party. This country is changing. You look at Georgia, that should not even be a contest, and now it's
Arizona.
close. Arizona, shouldn't even be close. It's close. So, and this whole thing, I mean, I have flashbacks, because I work for Ray Davis, of Arnold Schwarzenegger coming in and saying he's going to blow up the boxes, change everything. I have great business acumen. I'm going to change, and you know what? He was a disaster, and that's, I think, what the appeal of Trump is. People want change, they want somebody new, and he's saying almost the same exact thing Schwarzenegger says, but doing it worse, and he's in great shape. There's an appeal to that. Makes my back curdle, but we see the result of what happens when people like that get in office, down the line. But it's in a good political appeal, and I think, though, it does have long-term consequences for the Republican Party if he continues to talk about issues like race and Muslims and things like that, because, like it or not, the country is changing.
Thank you very much, Steve. Ryan, looks like we have an audience member.
Indeed, and John, on the topic of candidates and the images they project, that is, we have Chris Donhost, who doesn't really think either of them project a great image.
No, I don't think that, I'm not impressed by Trump's theatrics and his body language, but it is authentic, and it is Trump, and I really appreciate that part of it, I suppose. Now, how that, or whether or not that is presidential or not, I don't think so. And that's my greatest concern with him is, how he's perceived and how he's going to represent the office in this country. Hillary, on the other hand, with what she was providing tonight was the same old, a very plastic, a very scripted, something that she has done over and over again, probably can do in her sleep. That smile of hers, I don't trust it. And that does concern me.
And that lack of trust for her smile, for her overall, I assume, trustworthiness, right? That's born out of, and this is a question, that's born out of years of experience in analyzing her performance and being aware of what she has said versus what she has done. Is that, so in other words, did you reach that conclusion in the debate tonight or in the Democratic primary debates, or was this something that you've built up over a period of time?
It's something that I guess I've seen coming, and that sort of thing. And so she certainly hit the mark that I would expect her to hit, as did Trump, for that matter. I was really hoping that he might come off maybe a little more presidential, and he didn't. He went right back to the, But I mean, you guys make a good point in terms of, do you want to try and coach that out of somebody? No, because that is the authentic Trump. And so with all of his faults and spots, and we certainly have them all, we can see his, we can't see hers, and that's a great concern for me.
So, which leads to, I think, a very, very legitimate question. If you see him as somebody who's flawed insofar as not carrying the dignity, perhaps, that we expect or that we've grown accustomed to, and in terms of those who hold or even seek the Oval Office, is there somehow a benefit because you do get a glimpse into his true character, who he is, and how he processes information? Do you get that sense that there is sincerity there?
That's a good point, yeah, and I would agree with that.
You touched on, I think, a good point. Neither one of these candidates have you fired up. Did I get that right, in general?
That's true. I mean, the thing that I did appreciate hearing tonight, though, that Trump went to time and time again was about the national debt. And while it's sexy to talk about ISIS as being our greatest enemy, I personally believe that our national debt is our greatest enemy and our greatest liability in terms of this country and our national security. And, he wants to deal with that. He talked about that, and I appreciate that. And so that probably is going to win my vote, is that concern and that topic that he came home on time and time again this evening.
So not in love with either one of them, but you will vote.
Oh, absolutely, I'm going to vote. And every time I vote, it's in honor of those who've made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Whether I like the candidates or not, we're in a free country, and I'm going to vote for that reason. So.
Out of curiosity, is there anybody in here who has real strong positive feelings about either candidate? So would it be safe to say that, other than, yeah, would it be safe to say that it will be, I hate to use the term lesser of the two evils, but you'll be choosing the one that you feel is the better option of two that are not ideal? Is that,
Yeah.
not so much? We don't have you mic'd up, but let's get a little more.
I would say that we've seen a lot of Hillary's history, and so we know how ineffectual she's been in the past. We've seen Donald Trump grow a tremendous business, and we're aware of those leadership skills he has. I don't put a lot of stock in him as our leader, but I think the people that he brings in around him are the ones that are going to be making those policy decisions and whatnot. And I share your concern looking at what Arnold Schwarzenegger did with the governing California, but a president comes with a much larger cabinet. And so I think that he's going to be able to lead that cabinet. They're going to be able to plug in those pieces where they need to be. They're the ones that know where the bodies lie.
So it sounds as though this group of people assembled here tonight, with perhaps one exception, maybe your first choice is not the nominee for either side, and therefore you have to look and see, still choose from what you have, and look for the best in either, I suppose. What about the idea of those with whom they have surrounded themselves, those upon whom they go for assistance? Is that persuasive to the professionals? Do you think that's a big plus? Are you happy with her potential cabinet?
Well, I mean, her vice presidential choice, I thought, was brilliant on that score. And we know she knows the people that, it's going to be more of a continuation of Obama, I think, in terms of an administration.
Mike, what do you think? Are you?
Look, I'm not one of these people who believes the world's going to end because either one of these people are going to win or lose the presidency. And I think that kind of rhetoric really makes people less credible as messengers when they convey that. I think we're going to be fine as a country. We've been through far worse, far bigger issues. And look, when your president, whoever it is, calls you and asks you to serve, the best and the brightest, I think, do step up because the stakes maybe are even higher. And so is that a selling point for me? No, it's not. But I think the case that the gentleman's making is an accurate one. I think that's right.
Is it not a selling point for you because nobody extraordinary has been tapped, or is it?
No, I mean, look, I have to be very mindful as a political professional that the way I view the world and the way I see things are not the way the average voter is. And once we stop believing that, we become less effective. So this is very instructive for me because, again, a lot of this we're hearing in focus groups. You're hearing people say the word like disgust.
Yeah.
That I'd rather go crazy and vote crazy than continue the way we've been going because it does not work and it hasn't worked. We need to listen to that as political professionals
true.
because it's absolutely a strong current in the country.
Very true. We have to take care of some other business very quickly. We have audience input coming up shortly. But for radio purposes, we're going to take a quick break and come back. We will still continue to live stream in here, so remember your good manners. And we'll be back with more post-debate coverage right after this. Everybody doing okay?
You're thinking
We
something
talked
over there.
before we got in about a story that was on about
What do you got?
how she, as a woman, has a whole other set of things that she has to deal with. She has some good thoughts on that.
Oh, good. Okay. Ask you about some woman stuff when we come back. You okay with it? You don't mind being the voice of the woman?
ready.
Thank you very much for being here. This is great.
No, it's fine.
I wouldn't mind having you on the show sometime in the afternoon. You
Not
can
always will be. You just keep getting better and better as we keep going. I think that's right.
reach you through Mike Murray.
Yeah, so the world's not gonna end. It'll just veer a couple degrees.
Yeah.
One way or the
Well, I don't know. If Republicans have Congress, presidency, and Supreme Court, that's a trifecta we haven't seen in a long
I'm
time.
sensing fear from the Dems.
That's the big three.
I tell you the one that Megan sort of touched on here, actually a couple of things, but something that I think about personally, and I'm often concerned that Social Security is actually the world's biggest legal Ponzi scheme.
Absolutely
and as
is.
the
Look
baby
up Section
boomers
327
retire,
of the California Penal Code. It'll tell you that Social Security is absolutely clearly a violation of law.
Indeed. Well, I wonder as these folks retire if we're going to be able to keep paying for it. If we're going to have enough millennials and Gen Xers to continue to foot the bill.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, there was only one candidate that I recall really taking that on, and that was Chris Christie. I don't think anybody else, I don't think neither Trump nor Clinton have expressed a desire to.
Third rail.
Yeah, yeah, and you can see it that in doing my daily radio show, the most conservative-leaning people in the region, when it comes to touching Social Security in any way, shape, manner, or form, will rail against it. So yeah, you're right, it is the third rail.
And Megan's comments also brought me back to an event that I went to a few weeks ago with the Secretary of State Padilla at a high school in Lincoln High School, in fact, where he was trying to get people who are of age just barely or about to be of age to register to vote. And one young man who's a senior, about to turn 18, planning to register, said yes, he's engaged and he's watching and he's interested, but the more he sees of it, the more turned off he gets by the process. And it's based on the way things have gone in this particular election cycle. I found that to be an interesting observation.
Very interesting. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. John McGinnis here, along with our panel of experts who have been very generous with their time this evening, weighing in on their analysis of the debate. We've got both the partisan perspective on it as well as the kind of professional debate and communications perspective on it. We also have a group of people in the audience, one of whom has an observation to share right now. Who do we have, Ryan?
Actually, Linda Lee Master here has several observations, but the one that stands out on top is how the candidates are rated on the top 3 or 4 topics in which the general electorate find most important.
Very good.
I took about 4 pages of notes, so I'm just kind of, some of it was already covered, but I find it very interesting in the topics that the public and we the people feel so important are economy and jobs. Trump rates higher in, they believe that he would do a better job at. Terrorism is another one, and trust. So you have these top 3, well, I'd say the top are the economy and jobs, and then the terrorism and how to address that. And Trump rates higher in that, and the trustworthiness is also a key factor, that he rates high in trustworthiness. Now, although he's been indicated that he's lied 45 times, for me, when I see that, I think, well, I don't really necessarily consider that to be a lie. I think he makes false assumptions without factually stating something and just blurts it out. Those are like the Lester Holt situation. He made an assumption. Now, whether or not I call that a lie, I don't know. Hillary, on the other hand, blatantly has lied. The whole email thing really I find very disturbing, and how that's transpiring, even through the whole congressional hearings on that, and how all that came about and is continuing to come about. So with that said, I came in, I did have a strong leaning towards a particular candidate, and that I am a Trump supporter. I found in this debate, though, unfortunately, he didn't come out strong. Some of the things that when I sit here and I think about, oh, he could say this, or he should say this.
Can I just interrupt?
Sure.
Was it a matter of not being strong or not being
Articulate.
effective and articulate?
Effective in what
That
he
was the
could
term I
say.
used in communicating
Yes,
electronically with people, is
exactly.
inarticulate. I think the strength is there.
Right.
And frankly, I think in many of these critical issues that you point out, I think he's got facts on his side to a great
Correct.
extent. But his ability to articulate positions,
Right.
the most glaring of which to me was the stop, question, and frisk, Terry versus Ohio. Now, I know he has spent time with Rudy Giuliani, who understands that extraordinarily well, and in fact has litigated the matter in the past. To not have been able to absorb that information from him, be able to share it effectively, that's a legitimate cause for concern. So has that changed your vote, or your leaning with regard to who you're going to support?
No, it still does not.
Okay.
Because he does have the successfulness behind him, he just wasn't able to articulate that. For instance, in his business, he employs more women in positions than a lot of other companies do in their executive positions, and pays them actually more than what some companies do. So when it comes to the equality pay, he's already been doing that for a long period of time, including the woman that was on a construction site years before that was even considered. And at that time, his own father didn't think it was a good idea. So these are just things that I look at, and I actually have been to one of his rallies, and I have seen him speak. And actually, he did better at the rally that I went to than he did this evening. So I do know, and I've seen some other speeches too online that you can go and look at some of his speaking engagements, and how he is able to articulate in some cases in those
Yeah.
events.
Well, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your input. And I would add another dimension to that. Of course, it's in terms of the three important criteria, but this is very much a matter of partisan perspective, I suppose. But I'm very, very concerned about the future of the Supreme Court. There's a vacancy now. Looking at the age and general appearance of the court, you can anticipate at least another one before too terribly long. And I think at least one of the, in fact, it was a Republican appointee, has indicated his desire to leave before too long. I sense that he probably would wait until it was politically in the best interest of his values to go. But that's a huge issue for me. So I don't know how, I'm surprised that didn't come up tonight, but I suppose it has to do with the fact that it's pretty close to a 50-50 split, I think, across the country. Let me ask you, Professor, from a woman's perspective, looking at Hillary Clinton, first time a woman has been on this stage at this point, this level. What's the nuance there? What's different for her than has been for others, and certainly for him?
You know, I think people would like to think that there wouldn't be anything different. I think it's huge, and we shouldn't, whether we like her or not, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of the fact that we have a woman on this stage. I, again, disagree with her on policy issues, but this is a huge step forward, I think, for women. And I also think that we can't deny there is study upon study, research upon research, that women are evaluated differently in their communication styles than men. So in other words, a woman would engage, say, in very aggressive behavior in a debate and be evaluated as being shrill, whereas the man might engage in the same behavior and not be evaluated as negatively. For example, the use of powerful language in persuasion. There is research that shows that women who use powerful language are seen as less persuasive than men who use the exact same language. So I don't think, again, whatever side of the aisle you're on, that you can underestimate the importance of a woman being on that stage, and B, that they are up against, they have slightly different standards that they're being held to. I don't think that that's necessarily conscious for people, and again, that's what the research shows, that unconsciously people do make different assumptions about behaviors based on gender.
I think that's an entirely legitimate observation. I got to tell you something, though. My daughter just pointed this out to me. My physician, my accountant, and my lawyer, all women. So I don't know what that says. I mean, I think we're not all Neanderthals. Some of us are open to. I certainly have no concern, no quarrel whatsoever with the right woman being elected as President of the United States. I have no issues.
And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. I don't think someone is bad for not liking Hillary Clinton as a person. I don't think that they're necessarily all saying, I'm a Trump supporter because she's a woman. That's not what I'm saying. I think that it's a finer nuance than that at a certain level in terms of her being, the number one thing I hear from people is, oh, that tone that she uses, and you just don't hear that necessarily about a man using a similar tone. Look, I competed in college debate. I've judged college debate. I work in the classroom with adults who are really quite bright, and they agree that women agree, I should say, that they've had different experiences than their male counterparts in their communication and the way that they're evaluated.
I don't think any reasonable person could deny that there's an element of disparity because in a number of behavioral issues and so forth, that there's perhaps harsher criticism of women than there would be of men in the same or similar circumstances. Where to from here? What do you believe, Mike, that we're going to see in the coming weeks and months? Do you think?
Well, I think despite all the the theatrics and the fireworks, that this race will probably follow a very predictable trajectory. I think the next two debates, there are going to be three, I believe, right?
Yes.
I think they're going to look eerily similar to this one, and there will be eerily similar conversations, and the polling data will continue the 30-year trend that we've been witnessing over and over and over again, and people will postulate and analyze, but the truth of the matter is this is just, it's frankly quite predictable, and it's been predictable for a very long time.
Not going to ask you to identify whom in this context, in this environment, but in a private conversation, would you put a bet on who's going to be the next president of the United States?
I would not. The math and the data would suggest that Hillary Clinton is going to win this race, but the fact that she has not put this away by a very wide margin tells me as a political consultant that Donald Trump has a very good chance of winning this race.
It looks to me as though in recent weeks, or a little bit more than a month now, Donald Trump has taken on a different persona, different style, vastly improved in polling numbers. I think Kellyanne Conway is probably the person to whom the credit goes, should go. if his performance tonight is deemed as not being consistent with that improvement, do you think that's likely to level things off? It strikes me that he hasn't eclipsed her. In fact, I don't think he's matched her consistently. She still has the advantage, but the trend seems to be going in that direction. Is there anything out of this debate tonight, and I'll get input from any of you, that you tend to believe would change that course?
Well, I think this was a momentum stopper for Trump. He'd definitely been on a roll the last 6-8 weeks, and the polls have reflected that. And I think that sort of nipped it in the bud. There was a historic number of people watched this tonight. The next two debates will have lower viewership. And the first 30 minutes of this debate sort of set the tone for everything else, and that's what most people watch, and then people tail off. So I think it'll be very interesting what happens in the next few days. I think what's going to happen for the headlines and everything else is that Hillary won, and that somehow moves people. Don't ask me why. And also the fact-checking, and then I think you'll see Trump push back against the media. They'll push back against Lester Holt, and then we'll start the rough and tumble of the real campaign again.
Professor, your final thoughts. What about you? Do you think there's any kind of a momentum shift out of this?
Well, I agree with Steve. It's probably a little bit of a momentum stopper, but again, the question comes up is, will that only last a few days? You know, if I had the opportunity to talk to these two before the next debate, what really has sunk into me from our encounter here is what the young woman talked about in terms of them being able to reach those younger voters. And I would urge both of them, they have teams of bright people around them. Find out how to reach those voters. Find out how to speak to the hearts and the minds of people under 30, because those people were very fired up for Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And there has to be a way to speak to them. And I think the town hall debate presents that opportunity because citizens, voters will get an opportunity to ask them questions. So I really think that's where they need to prepare.
Professor Tudor. Mike Maviglio. Steve Maviglio. I just created a hybrid.
Professor
Mike Madrid. Thank you all very much for being here. Studio audience, thank you for being here. We will no doubt continue the conversation in the days and weeks to come, and we'll probably be talking about it tomorrow in the morning and in the afternoon on the John McGinnis Show on News Radio KFBK. Thank you so much.